What is the meaning of human life? What shapes a person's destiny? Why does God, whatever he may be, withhold the knowledge that would allow man to understand the purpose of his existence? Is religion the answer? All great civilizations have records about the origins of the universe and humankind, and yet there is another teaching that is almost never mentioned, or if it is, it's usually in a negative context. It is the teaching of Kabbalah. At the birth of the universe and mankind, there existed an infinite metaphysical energy. This energy, according to the teachings of Kabbalah, formed the entire physical existence, including stars, planets, and people. The 10 veils mentioned in Kabbalah represent 10 dimensions that define various aspects of creation. Only our physical world, according to this teaching, contains space and time. The ego, Kabbalah says, is not something we are born with. The ego develops as a result of the influence of certain external forces on our consciousness and personality. And that is why the question can rightly be asked: what is life? What is its purpose? What happens to a human being after physical disappearance, after death? Is it possible that human life, so short, difficult, often tragic and filled with bitterness, failures and misfortune, exists only as the product of some cosmic whim? Beneath the surface of everyday life, behind all philosophical and religious quests, lies one fundamental question. Why does God, regardless of how we define him, deny man the knowledge of the purpose of his existence? Is religion the answer? Or is religion merely a constructed image created by humans to fill the void left by the absence of understanding? The Jewish theologian and Kabbalist Yehuda Berg writes in one of his books, "God has nothing to do with religion. Religion was invented by people." And indeed, all great civilizations such as Sumer and Egypt have left behind records of the creation of the world and mankind. All major monotheistic religions, without exception, begin their sacred texts with the theme of creation. For example, Judaism and Christianity open the Torah and the Gospels with the story of creation. Although the creation story is often told metaphorically, using metaphysical imagery that is frequently unclear to the average reader, it remains a part of unquestionable doctrine due to the authority that holy books possess. Very few authors dare to question these postulates. Nevertheless, there is another teaching that is almost never considered in public or academic discussions. When it is mentioned in the modern age, it is often portrayed in a negative light, which it certainly does not deserve. That teaching is Kabbalah. Online, this teaching is most commonly presented as some dark, esoteric practice associated with Satanism and similar conspiracy theories. There are even mentions of alleged deep state programmers who supposedly use Kabbalistic knowledge to turn people into slaves, to sell their souls to the devil, and so on. Such claims fuel religious fanaticism and come from amateurs who impose themselves as authorities. But what must be stated clearly is this: a person cannot sell their soul to the devil because the soul does not belong to the person. It belongs to God. God does not give that soul to anyone. He retains it for himself after the person's physical death. That is why all stories about selling one's soul are utter nonsense. However, this is a topic that may require more attention in the future. For now, it is enough to focus on the essence of Kabbalah, to shed light on its true nature and meaning. Kabbalistic teaching is one of the deepest and oldest spiritual systems humanity possesses. Although it developed over centuries, Many of its concepts today feel remarkably modern, as if they were formulated in the last few decades. At the moment of the creation of the universe and of man, Kabbalah says, there existed an infinite, boundless metaphysical energy called the light. This light represented a state of absolute perfection, infinite joy, complete peace, and unity with the Creator. It was a realm of divine expression in which neither time nor space existed between the source and the souls that emanated from it. The Creator then created all human souls with one purpose: to bestow upon them that light. But as Kabbalah teaches, light that is received without personal effort and participation does not bring true fulfillment. Yehuda Berg explains that when a person receives happiness they did not create themselves, a feeling of emptiness emerges, a kind of inner gap. What is missing is responsibility, one's own contribution to happiness. And so the light began to withdraw. Its withdrawal was a call to humanity, to find it again, to earn it, to attain it through personal effort. In that withdrawal of light, a space of darkness was created, a space that made the existence of the physical universe possible. This is what modern science refers to as the Big Bang. Thus, the teachings of Kabbalah do not contradict contemporary scientific theories. Rather, they complement them from a metaphysical perspective. Kabbalah does not offer answers in the form of dogma, but in the form of an inner path and understanding. Although to many it still seems mysterious, even enigmatic, Kabbalah is, in fact, a sophisticated spiritual system that seeks to explain the origin of the universe, the purpose of human existence, and the nature of reality in a way that honors both the spiritual and the rational. People often reject what they do not understand, what scares them, or what they cannot control. But perhaps it is precisely in that fear that the obstacle lies, the one keeping us from understanding what life truly is. Kabbalah invites us to ask the deepest questions, to not accept ready-made answers lightly, and to never stop searching for the truth, no matter how deeply it may be hidden behind the veil of ignorance, fear, and dogma. And as the world increasingly faces crises of identity, faith, and meaning, perhaps the time has come to turn to those teachings that have, for decades or even centuries, been pushed aside, not because they lacked value, but because they required effort to understand. And truth, like light, does not come without effort. In that challenge lies the true purpose of human existence. Kabbalah does not teach us to seek God somewhere outside ourselves, in the heavens, in rituals, or in religious institutions, but rather to search for the divine within. The light, which Kabbalah describes as the source of everything, is not merely a spiritual entity. It is an inner spark, a potential waiting to be awakened. The ego, on the other hand, is not an enemy to be destroyed, but a shadow that must be understood, transcended, and transformed. We cannot ignore it or suppress it, because when we do, it returns stronger. Paradoxically, the ego is our teacher. It confronts us with our weaknesses, fears, and limitations. Kabbalah calls us to work on ourselves, to examine our own intentions, choices, and reactions, to become aware of where we have distanced ourselves from the light and how we can return to it. The human being is a microcosm, a mirror of the entire universe. Everything that exists externally has its counterpart within. The Sefirot on the Tree of Life are not just divine spheres in abstract realms. They exist within each individual. Wisdom, strength, mercy, harmony, These are qualities that can be cultivated. The path of spiritual work is the path of daily practice. It is not isolated asceticism, not an escape from society, but conscious presence in every moment, when we speak, when we act, when we love, when we suffer. Kabbalah does not divide life into spiritual and mundane. It teaches every moment is spiritual. Everything is an opportunity to reveal the light. One of Kabbalah's most powerful lessons is the understanding of the law of cause and effect. Every thought, every emotion, every action creates a wave that ripples through the universe. Nothing is accidental. Kabbalah teaches us to take responsibility for our own reality. There is no external culprit. Everything that happens is a reflection of an inner state. When we realize that, we stop complaining and begin to change. This is not an easy path, but it is the only one that leads to true fulfillment. In this process, a person is shaped as the creator of their destiny, not a passive participant. They become someone who does not merely seek the light, but creates it. The experience of darkness has its purpose. Where there is no light, where we feel pain, sorrow, or a sense of being lost, there lies the potential for spiritual breakthrough. Kabbalah teaches that light comes through resistance, through recognizing and overcoming our own weaknesses. When we learn to love where it is hard, to give where we would rather take, to trust where we would normally doubt, that is when we begin to change. And that change does not stay only within us. It changes the world. Because the world is a reflection of collective consciousness. The more individuals awaken their inner light, the more humanity as a whole moves toward the light. Kabbalah is a system of knowledge that is not learned by rote, it is lived. It is a living teaching that grows as we grow. There is no final truth written in books. Truth is dynamic. It evolves as our capacity to understand it evolves. Kabbalah does not seek followers, but explorers. It does not offer ready-made answers, but tools to discover the answers that are true for us. In this sense, Kabbalah is a revolution of consciousness. It breaks illusions, shatters dogmas, and opens space for inner freedom. Freedom is not the ability to do whatever we want. Freedom is the ability to choose what leads us toward the light, rather than what brings us fleeting comfort. And that is why the work of Kabbalah is the work of heroes. It is not easy to face oneself. It is not easy to recognize that we are not victims, but creators. But it is precisely this realization that gives us power, the power to change, to build, to forgive, to love unconditionally. Kabbalah teaches that true love is giving without expectation. When we love in that way, we draw closer to the source. The light does not place conditions. It shines for all, for the righteous and the sinners, the strong and the weak, the conscious and the unconscious. Our task is to become like that light, to give, not because we have to, but because in giving we find ourselves. In the end, the purpose of life according to Kabbalah is not to escape this world, but to transform it. The world is not an obstacle to spirituality. It is its playground. Everything that exists to teach us something about ourselves. And so, the next time we feel pain, let us not reject it. Let us observe it. Let us ask, what is this situation trying to tell me? Where am I in all of this? What light have I not yet found? Because pain is simply a voice calling us to change. Kabbalah teaches us not to seek salvation from the outside, but from within. Salvation is an inner process. a return from darkness to light. And so, as we journey through our own universe, unveiling veil after veil, dimension after dimension, we begin to understand. We are not here by accident. We have not been abandoned without guidance. The guide is within us, and the light has never left us.